Hello everyone, welcome to this little tutorial. So a while back I said I'll show you how I add that subtle glow to some of my photos. Well, this is it. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so basically there are three ways that I know of how to add a glow to your photos. I typically just use two in Photoshop because that's where I feel most comfortable in adding that glow and also in terms of flexibility. However, there is one way in Lightroom that I know of, which works for some photos. It doesn't for others because it is quite subtle. Sometimes just not enough, but it is there, and I'll also show you how to do that one. The way that you add that glow in Lightroom is by reducing the clarity, which you can find under the Basics tab, right about here. Seeing as Lightroom is less flexible as Photoshop, you tend to find that it works best on images which have a clear light source. So for example, this one, another one would be this one. Both of them quite clear in terms of light source, so it shouldn't be difficult to add a glow mostly to the bright areas of a photo. As soon as it becomes more complex, so for instance, this one here, where you have a subject in that line, in that frame of the light itself, it becomes more complicated because adding blur will also reduce contrast, which you typically don't want to have applied on the subject. Otherwise it kind of fades into the background, which you don't want to happen typically. All right, so let's start with the first method in Lightroom. Press on the adjustment brush up here. One tip, if you have a rectangle like you have here, or any shape which has straight lines, you can draw a straight line by pressing on one end. So just left click, and then holding Shift and pressing on the other end. Again, just one click. There you go. If you now click O, there you go, you will see the overlay of the mask that you've just created. And then you just draw all around the area with the light source until you've filled it all. There we go. Now obviously we've drawn over the edges. It shouldn't be a big problem, but you can reduce that by using the range mask tool down here. Then there's two options. One way to make your mask more precise is by selecting the areas which hold the same color, or which hold the same luminance of the area that you will click on. In this case, I prefer to have the luminance masked out. Click on the luminance, then use the eyedropper tool here, and click on the brightest part. There you go. Now you can clearly see which parts have been masked, which is exactly what you want in this case. So it works quite well. Get rid of it here by just clicking back on it. Click on O, so we can get rid of the overlay, and you can actually see the edits that we will apply to now. And the way that you do it in Lightroom is by clicking on clarity and reducing it to as much as you want. In this case, since it is already very bright, you have to reduce it completely. One thing that you'll find with applying blur is that contrast is also reduced. You won't see it here because this image is very bright, and well, the subject is silhouetted anyway, so you won't see a big difference here, but I'll have a photo in Photoshop later that I'll show you. Okay, and that is already pretty much it. I mean, as I said, the Lightroom version is less flexible. It's just the way Lightroom works, but it is a quick and dirty way of doing it, you know, if you're short on time. Okay, so let's start with the first method in Photoshop to add a subtle glow. I try and keep it as short as possible, but you'll find yourself that you start with a base layer here. From there, you wanna press Command J or Control J depending on Windows or Mac in order to create a copy. From this point, you right click and click on convert to smart object. That will allow you to edit non-destructively. So, so that you can add a filter and then later change it if you don't like the value, right? So the filter that we need, obviously the blur, you'll find it up here under the filter tab. Click on it, then then click on blur, and then you find it here under Gaussian blur. Then here, I mean, the values that I typically find work best are between 20 and 24 pixels. You might find that you need a different value, up to you, just play around with it. I'll select 24, click OK. Then from there, we have to add contrast, because as explained earlier, adding blur will reduce contrast, which you don't want. You want to have that glow, but still have a contrasty image, if that is what you're going for, of course. Anyway, so click here then on the adjustment layer icon, then click on curves. There you go. Clip it. The edit that we have here will just affect the layer beneath it and not all layer beneath it. So by clicking this icon here, there we go, it will now just affect the layer directly beneath it. So crush the blacks a little bit. Since there's already a lot of contrast, you don't have to do a lot here. Sometimes you need more. In this case, you don't. Blow out the highlights as well. There you go. And by clicking this small eye here, you can see the before and after. So once you're happy with this, close it. What I tend to do to make it easier later is click on both of them, so that you have selected both of them, and then put them into a group. That way you can add a mask layer later, which will affect both, well, basically everything in the group rather than the effects individually. So click down here on create a group, or you can also click Command G or Control G will do the same thing. Then rename it. Well, I like to rename it just to have some order, to Orton. And then from there, change the blending mode up here to normal, sorry, and reduce the opacity to 0. From there, I work my way up until I'm happy with the result. I typically find that between 10 and 20% it works best. In this case, 18 is nice. Again, you can see the before and after by clicking on the eye here, the eye icon. That is the before, that is the after. It is quite subtle, but you want to keep it subtle. Anything other will typically make it look weird. Sometimes it works, but most of the time it doesn't. So I like to stay between those 10 to 20 values. Anyway, close it, close the group. There you go. Then, as mentioned earlier, if you zoom in a bit, you find that the subject has also been blurred a little bit, and well, it has lost contrast, which is one of the consequences of adding blur, which you obviously don't want, right? You want to keep it contrasty and, well, quite dark, otherwise it won't pop. Anyway, so the way you do that is by adding a layer mask, which you do by clicking on this icon here, just left of the adjustment layer icon. There you go. Then you can see that here. And now you have to mask out the subject so that the effect of the blur and the contrast, the curves that we added, won't affect that part of the image. So click on B to create your brush, and then by holding Control and Option, you can left click, and drag the cursor left and right to increase the brush in size, and up and down to increase and decrease the hardness and softness of the brush. From there, you click on X so that the foreground will be black. That way you can mask out the areas that you don't want affected by the effect, right, of the blur. One thing that if you're not familiar with the masking tool, just quickly explaining how it works. Here on the left side, you can see two different colors. At the moment, black and white. Black hides and white reveals. In the sense that anything that you paint black on this layer mask that we just added here behind the group will be hidden, and blur won't affect that part of the image. So if you click on it, if you draw above that part, you find that it will suddenly decrease drastically. Decrease drastically in color again, because we obviously take out that blur, and with that we bring back the contrast that it had originally. Well, I'm not going to do this entire thing again because I've done this tedious part already once. So let's get rid of this one here, and I'll show you what it should look like finished. There you go. I'll show you the before and after as well. That is where we started off before, and that is what it looks like masked out. There you go. That is basically the Orton effect, the most commonly used glow effect in Photoshop, the way I do it now. What is neat about this method is that should you not like the results, you can open your group with this little arrow here, and then adjust and change the values of the curves and the blur the way that you want to. So let's say that you want to get rid of some of the contrast. Sure, use the curves a little bit, get some of those blacks back. There you go. Before and after, and you see it here. Same thing for the glow. For the blur. So you click on Gaussian blur down here, and you change the pixels that you have used earlier, and you can see it live how it changes. There you go. So that is the first method of adding that glow. Let's move on to the second one, which is quite situational, but I want to show you how it's done either way, so you can have a play with it as well. Alright, so on to the second method. I find that it works best, this particular method works best when you have very, very bright light sources like you have here. So you start off with again creating a copy, so Command J or Control J. Then from here, again, right click, convert to smart object. There you go. Then again, click filter, blur, Gaussian blur, click on it. Again, 24 works best for me. Click on OK. All right. So now we won't add the curves adjustment layer. We will add this blur differently just to the bright areas. And the way that you do that is you click on the blending modes here, change it from normal to lighten, click on it, and then again reduce the opacity so you can start at 0 and see what you need, what value you need in order to make it look the way that you like it. So you increase it little by little. Seems to work. Let's go on 40. There you go. Again, this is very situational, and you might find that different values work better for your image. So really just play around with it until you're happy. Click on the eye icon to see the before and after. And if you're happy, that is it. Obviously, this method is simpler than the other one. However, it will certainly not work for every image. So the other one is definitely more commonly applicable. If we zoom in a bit, should you find that you don't want that blur on the subject like you see here, there you go, you can see it around here, you can get rid of it by the same concept. So again, you mask the subject out. So you click on the layer mask icon down here, you find your mask right behind the layer, click on B and to select your brush, and then you mask the subject out again. Make sure that the foreground is black so that you can hide the effect wherever you start drawing on your layer mask. So just to give you an idea what it would look like if I would draw it out. So I'm not going to do the entire thing, but just so that you get an idea of how it would look like if you would want it without this bleeding over effect. You can see the before and after of the mask alone as well by holding the shift button and left clicking on the mask layer, on the layer mask here. Click on it. When you see the X, you'll know that you're on the before. Click on it again to see the after. So there you go. That is the other method, which has come in handy at times as well. There you go. Before and after. Okay, so this marks the end of this tutorial. I hope that it did help some of you. I know that I went through it quite fast. I know that people that might not be familiar with Photoshop find it a bit too quick. So whenever you do run into a problem, just message me, and I hope that I can clarify, or if it's something more complex, maybe do a follow-up video just to explain it in more detail. Anyway, I hope this was useful to some of you, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.